So I just found out one of the most notorious and terrifying women in Scottish history. I'm talking about a political schemer, witch hunting aristocrat, has almost completely been removed from history books, but her actions helped shape the royal family as we know it today. Pretty crazy, huh? Let's talk about Marie Ruthven. Haven't heard of her? Well, you're not alone. But her clan, the Ruthvens, were major players in Scottish high society, and they were someone you didn't want to cross. A perfect example of this is what they did to Mary Queen of Scots when she was crazy pregnant with James VI. In 1566, Marie Ruthven was just a little girl, but Mary Queen of Scots was married to this guy that she was super into at first, but he ended up being really toxic and like a raging narcissist. So Mary would just kind of spend all of her time with her ladies in waiting and her best gay friend, David Rizzio. So Rizzio was like this iconic musician at the time, and Mary Queen of Scots was the young cosmopolitan it girl queen that everyone was obsessed with at the time. So they were solid buddies. So Rizzio would play music for Mary and her crew, but he would also run interference and kind of brush off anyone that Mary just didn't want to deal with. Well, her toxic husband, yeah, he wasn't a fan of that, and it didn't end well. So he teamed up with Marie Ruthven's father and grandfather. And one night, while Mary Queen of Scots was heavily pregnant and just trying to eat dinner, they barged in, dragged David Rizzio out, and stabbed him nearly 60 times, and then threw his body down a stairwell. Absolutely brutal. The murder of Rizzio was the scandal of the time, and everyone was talking about it. Artists from all over tried to capture the sheer chaos and horror of that moment. It's a really awful situation, and there wasn't much Mary Queen of Scots could do. She was crazy pregnant and unarmed and eating dinner. The faces in the crowd, well, a few of those have to be Marie Ruthven's father and grandfather since they played a main part in this event. Take a look at this one and really look at Mary Queen of Scots' face. She's pregnant, cornered, but her face? That's not fear, that's pure rage. Mary was not someone you crossed without consequences, and she was gonna make sure someone paid. So shortly after all that went down, Mary Queen of Scots was visiting the countryside for a week, and two giant barrels of gunpowder somehow found their way under her husband's bed and blew up. There's no proof that Mary Queen of Scots did it, but I will say there's one thing that I've learned in this life, and that's you never mess with a queen's gay best friend. And that's just one example of many. Marie Ruthven was raised in a family that didn't play politics. They played to win, and violence wasn't a last resort. It was almost a family tradition. Alright, so that's the David Rizzio backstory. Now if you fast forward a few years, Marie Ruthven is about to marry John Stuart. He's the future Earl of Atholl, and his whole family are huge cheerleaders of Mary Queen of Scots. For example, John's dad was one of only 3 nobles that would vote for Mary Queen of Scots' interests in Parliament, which was a huge deal at the time, and John's mom was a lady-in-waiting for Mary Queen of Scots, and Mary Queen of Scots actually paid a huge dowry for her to get married, and they exchanged letters, and they say John's mom might have been a witch. That's a whole thing I'll have to get into in the next episode, but it's pretty wild. I understand that opposites attract, but these two families were polar opposites, so for a Ruthven to marry a Stuart, I don't know, it's kind of weird. And speaking of weird, less than a year after they were married, John's mom and dad are poisoned. John's mom survives, but the Earl didn't make it. So that makes John Stuart the new Earl of Atholl, and Marie, well, she's officially the Countess. Alright, I feel bad. I'm not trying to imply she did it because I don't know if she did it. But I am saying that there are a lot of poisonings in this story. I mean, like a lot of poisonings in this story, so you can't blame a guy for being suspicious. Let me know what you think in the comments. Am I right? Am I wrong? I think it's weird. So Marie levels up, titles pass, and the dust settles. You think that maybe the Ruthvens would just let Marie live in wedding bliss, but nah, not this family. What do? They decide this is the perfect opportunity to do another attempt at King James. And yes, I'm talking about that same king. The literal child Mary Queen of Scots was pregnant with when the whole Rizzio stabbing thing went down. He orchestrates what's now called the Ruthven Raid. What they do is they get the teenage king to kind of go on a hunt and kidnap him, and they hold him for over a year and run the country from the shadows. So the whole thing is super sketchy for a number of reasons. Here's a painting of it, and yeah, this is a teenage guy being held by a bunch of dudes for a year. It's a little creepy, honestly. And I really didn't know much about King James before doing all of this research, and yeah, a lot of people came for him in some really weird ways, so I kind of feel bad for this dude, especially when he was a kid. Here's another painting of him. I mean, when he gets older, he definitely goes off the rails, and I'll talk about that in a different video, but here he's just a kid, and I can kind of understand why he went kind of crazy. Yeah, that's a tough go as a kid. I honestly just feel bad for him. But here's the twist. James eventually escapes, and he is not happy, and he is not having it with the Ruthvens anymore. So what does he do? He goes on the attack. He finds everyone involved, makes a public trial, and beheadings. Yeah, and on top of that, he decides he's going to erase the Ruthven name from history. Marie is mostly left alone during this time because she's married to the Stuart family, and they're huge supporters of King James and his mom, Mary Queen of Scots. But guess what? Another poisoning. This time it's her husband, John Stuart. So that means he follows his parents in the poisoning train, and now Marie is the last remaining royal of Athol. And the kicker? Right after his death, she quickly remarries, like just a few months later. So Marie is actually expecting to keep the title, and her new husband can be Earl and she can be the Countess. But guess what? King James is now King of England, and he has something to say about it. I'm guessing all those murder attempts and kidnappings aren't sitting well. So he decides, nah, I'm not having it, and he's going to give the title to his new wife, Anne of Denmark. Anne of Denmark was actually really good friends with John Stuart. So they have Marie in a really bad spot. But Marie pulls out that famous Ruthven charm and convinces the crown to let her buy the title. But they charge her an insane amount of money, so she is not happy. So if we've learned anything about Marie, is that she's not going to take a royal snub like this lightly. Guess what? Within a couple months, there's another attempt on King James' life. But this time, poison. Wow, that's a lot of poisonings. This time, everybody suspects Marie. I mean, the king himself, Anne of Denmark, the court, the public, everyone thinks Marie did it. And honestly, I have no idea how she talked her way out of this one. I mean, you have to respect it. At this point, you'd think Marie would just take her title and land and live her life. But no, this is just the beginning. Marie's life takes a very dark turn at this point, and she plays a central role in the Scottish witch trials. I'm talking accusations, executions, including some of her former in-laws. In part 2, we'll do a deep dive into how Marie Ruthven went from Countess to Witch Hunter. We'll also talk about how this plays into Newslane's castle and the ghost there. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'll try and put a link somewhere. Check out my other videos. It's some pretty crazy stuff, but until then, thanks for checking this out and stay nerdy. Thanks. Awesome. Hey, real quick, what do you think of this graphic at the end? Is it a cool vibe or just full-on cringe? You can totally be honest. I can take it. Probably. But yeah, if you haven't yet, please comment, like, subscribe. It's totally lame, but it really does help. So, hey, thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you next time.